Take two. How's it going, everyone? And welcome to another episode of No Excuses on VTWProductions.com and YouTube.com with your favorite show host, Aristil.
What? Okay. And Volacel. And in case you didn't hear, Fenurian is here as well. Because we're having technical issues.
So,
okay, can they hear you now?
They can hear me now. So, this is probably going to be element one of my week already, but I had to download a Windows update and it ruined everything.
As it does.
Yeah.
But first of all, before we get into that in more detail, if you'd like to involve the show, you can do so by sending us emails at noexcusesvtw@gmail.com, or you can follow us on the Twitter at noexcusesvtw, or you can join us in our Discord server, which you can access by clicking on the Discord link in the video description, or alternatively, you can click on the show logo on any of our recent show posts at vtwproductions.com.
Yes, indeedy. So, yeah, on the stream today, this is pretty much going to be all of our weeks, by the way. Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah.
I didn't do a whole lot else this week, admittedly. So yeah, I had to download this Windows update because it comes up and it starts freaking out that Windows, or this version of Windows, will not be supported if you don't update. You can tell it to go away.
And it'll show up a week later and pester you again and try to auto-restart your computer.
Well, you can ignore it for only a certain amount of time before it just installs it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Because Windows. So it did.
Yeah.
Apparently it just absolutely deleted half of my OBS settings, which was fun to find at the last moment. But it also did things like break my Ethernet drivers.
Yeah. You reported this to Vol, and I was just kind of like, I guess that's a thing that happened.
Yeah.
And when Vol told me, I think he told him in the middle of while we were playing.
Yeah. So I ended up just kind of plugging in my old network Wi-Fi adapter until it just randomly decided it was going to work, which took about 3 days. Absolutely no other input on my part from that. It was just, yeah, okay, it's just going to work now.
It does seem to quite typically be the way that it goes.
Yeah.
Computers are semi-sentient. They all have their own personality. It just had to wait till it was in a good mood.
That goes double for Windows operating systems, where they're just...
Or possibly that it had to get over the trauma of being molested by Windows Update.
That could have been it. Ugh. I have no idea what else has changed, but odds are I'm probably going to find something very inconvenient at the worst possible moment. Ugh. So, anywho, my week has been largely Final Fantasy 14. I've managed to rope these two into it accidentally somehow. It didn't take a whole lot of effort, honestly.
Well, it just so happened to coincide with me reinstalling the game on a whim.
Yeah.
So
I'm picking my way through Heavenswood, which means running around and dealing with really stuck up and eternally smug dragons.
Well, they've got history. They don't really like people very much.
They got good reason to, I suppose.
Although I'm pretty sure that Midgard Soma just likes snarking at you.
Oh yeah, that's just Midgard Soma's whole deal. Is a snark. But yeah, can't remember a whole lot of what else was going on in the story other than there be dragons, and Hero of Light has been exiled from the other three kingdoms, even though you can walk back there, just walk around freely.
Gameplay and story segregation.
Gotta love it. So yeah, we have a dead Lalafell Sultana, and I know this is slight spoilers for A Realm Reborn, but go watch a video. So yeah, unfortunately at this point it meant finishing off a rather dull dungeon, being Dusk Vigil. It's not hard. It's kind of cool, but there's nothing really challenging in there.
It's sort of introductory, isn't it?
It is. And now I've got to go into Samar, which I will not be doing while I'm doing the stream, because I need to pay attention, because there is many types of fire to not stand in.
Yeah, I don't remember much about it other than I didn't particularly find it thrilling.
Yeah. What on earth am I supposed to be doing? Oh, right. Sneaking around ritual fragment thingies. Oh, no, never mind. So yeah, I did Dusk Vigil, and then I promptly got lost in the mountains.
In the mountain.
In the mountains, because it tells you, hey, you got to go up to the top where not Midgardsormr, some other dragon is, Tiaman. And we're going to give you some very vague directions and absolutely no guidance up into this labyrinth. Have fun.
L2 fly noob.
Yeah. So yeah, I've just been chipping away at my dailies, and I'll continue to do that today because hey, there's mounts on the up for grabs. I don't know what else is there really to talk about, I suppose. As for the enemies, I did some enemies. Caught up on Black Clover. Yeah, everything's kind of going to hell in a handbasket in that show.
Knife-eared bastards.
Knife-eared jerks. There are elves, and they are everywhere.
Nobody likes elves. Come on.
Nobody likes elves. Especially the excessively smug, self-righteous type. There seems to be actually some sort of thing that happened that's kind of got them all angry. And whatever it is must be pretty bad.
Yeah, but it's going to turn out to be some appalling misunderstanding they never bothered to do the research on.
Yeah. Are you caught up as well of all, or can I not
To
spoil
the
this?
anime, yes. I haven't
Alright.
read any of the manga.
Alright, I'm going to spoil it a little bit, but yeah, the big leader of the elves is not actually who he says he is. He's pretending to be the actual leader because reasons.
Yeah, but that makes you wonder, where is the actual leader?
He's the guy in the big bubble.
Yeah, but is he like actually complicit or not?
You know, that's
Because
what
he seems like the idealistic sort that would still turn the other cheek even after everything.
Yeah, he seems like a really nice guy, and that makes me wonder if they're just going to throw the whole thing out on a whim where he wakes up and says, "Oh hell no!" Smacks
What have you
down
guys
the
done?
fake guy. Yeah, what have you done? Because yeah, you know, randomly waking up and brainjacking people is totally going to fly.
Yeah, it's sort of after you do that, it's hard to say you have the moral high ground.
Yeah.
Like they claim to be victims of genocide, but nobody seems to have actually checked to see if they were or not, since, you know, forbidden soul transfer, time travel spell, etc., etc. Like there wasn't exactly an aftercare project.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it seems like everyone who's more intelligent than Asta, which is everyone,
The entire cast.
the entire cast, seems to be more hell-bent on just going and fighting.
Well, I think that's surprisingly realistic compared to most shonen. Most shonen stories, everybody stops to have a chat.
Yeah.
But in this case, like, you've got to remember that the Magic Knights are all soldiers. It's their job to kill people.
Mm-hmm. Don't think
And-
about things.
Yeah, like Asta's actually the odd one out because he's an idiot, so he doesn't do his job properly, and his job is ultimately to kill people.
Yep.
Because it's a shonen, he can get away with like just beating them up, and he can do his monologues and whatnot. But everybody else is reacting the way they should, which is to fight.
Yeah. So it's going to take an idiot to actually pull everyone's head out of their asses by the sound of it.
And that's the traditional way these things go, right? You know, therapy no jutsu.
Yeah. I mean, he did a very poorly animated monologue, which seems to have gotten through to the elves already because he stopped to, you know, I wouldn't say think about things because he's Asta, but stopped to actually kind of call them out on their crap. I just wish it wasn't so badly animated. Like, his face looked so off-model to that entire thing. It's weird.
I think his face looks off model all the time, even when it's on model.
It kind of does. But half of the time that's deliberate, and I don't think it was intentional in this case. The other anime I started watching is Dr. Stone, because I heard it's pretty good. And yeah, okay, I'm kind of getting into it. It's all about humanity being petrified for a few thousand years, and basically once people start waking up, they kind of reset from point zero. And,
I read
Mr. Sciencey
I read
guy.
some of that manga before it became an anime, and I lost interest real quick. Like,
yeah, so your protagonist is a super science nerd. He loves his science. So he kind of pushes everything to move forward again. But aside from that, he's also kind of an idiot because he gets severe tunnel vision. So,
I see.
what is this? Right. So they do these really annoying things like, oh, here's a guy we need to wake up. I hope he's not a murderer. Oh, he's a murderer.
Really?
Yeah.
Who could have guessed?
Who could have guessed? They're joking about waking up a murderer. They wake up a murderer immediately because, of course, they do. Then the anime turns around and says, here, kids, here's how you literally make gunpowder.
What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong?
It ain't that hard. I mean...
Yeah, it's not hard, but... the cute little robot that pops up and says, hey kids, don't try this at home, doesn't really dissuade anyone.
Kids are going to go, I could probably distill that stuff from household cleaners.
Do not do that. Just don't. So, it's an interesting hook, but yeah, I'm not exactly sure where they're going with it. Like, I've reached maybe episode 4 where they've found that there are other people who have started waking up somehow. So, yeah. The characters... You've got your sciencey guy who tunnel visions horribly. You've got your big meathead idiot. You've got your murderer, and you've got the girl.
The girl.
The girl. That seems to be her only talent, really.
The one that should be locked away in a padded room so that the human race can survive.
Oh, wait. She's that useless?
Well, no, just if you are down to 4 people on Earth, and only one of them can carry the kids, you don't want to lose that one.
You don't want to lose that one, no.
That one is fairly irreplaceable.
Yeah. But they woke her up because she's the meathead's love interest. So, yeah, okay, fair enough. But she hasn't really done anything since waking up.
Well, she's the chick.
She's the chick, but
she's not really supposed to do anything. That's the shonen. The chick never does anything.
Yeah, but when they woke up the murderer, he's really good at hunting and tracking and that sort of outdoorsy stuff. They woke up the meathead, and admittedly, he's kind of an idiot, but at least he's good at moving heavy things.
He can lift boxes.
He can lift boxes. He does. So that's sometimes what you need. But she doesn't seem to have any talents, so I'm not sure what the whole deal there is. Maybe she's going to turn out to be absolutely good at everything.
She does have talents. It's called having a uterus.
Rebuilding the population sort of scenario, that's actually a pretty big talent. So yeah, I'm going to keep watching it, see where they go. I'm not sure if I'll watch it to completion, but yeah.
I'm going to be arrested for soggy knees, aren't I?
Probably. But
in your country, definitely.
Considering what you've got in the office. So, yeah, admittedly the anime on the for this season's a bit light on the ground as to what's worth watching.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you there.
Yeah. Well, what's the other choice? Well, it's a show about firemen that's not actually about firemen because it's shonen.
I think that's a marketing error more than anything else.
Yeah.
I don't think that they realised that they had not bothered to explain what the show was about.
No, so you look at it and on the surface value, it's a show about firefighters.
It's not a show about firefighters.
No.
Or at least it's a show about firefighters in the most literal sense.
Yes, considering the firefights back, quite literally, because it's demons.
Yeah. And then there were demons.
Because demons, and apparently that's what they do now. We had one bonus episode of Slime Time, which was really sweet. Also, Gonky. Yeah, it's just a pretty dry anime season, all told. Unless you're really into some of the romantic stuff, which I am not.
Well, it's always cringy. It's the problem.
Yeah.
Like there's not really much in between like the hyper cringe of like the really tortured teenage angst stuff and the sort of cringe of the key anime, like where
the key anime is always
ultimately it's incredibly tormented and everything is solved by magic.
like everything is horrible for everybody. Everybody gets the bad end, and then key magic happens.
Yeah.
Or
which is not ever explained why, but
it just does.
And when you get like the occasional anime that does the romance right, the heroine always starts off with the most abrasive, worst personality you could imagine, trying to be tsundere, but really just being a colossal jackwagon who would ruin your life if you were around her for more than 3 seconds, like Toradora.
Yeah.
Was it you or Abo that really likes Toradora?
Abo really loves Toradora. Or you get a really decent love story packaged into a mystery anime that, because of the time constraints of trying to split it between the two, you wind up with nothing that actually works, like Gothic.
Let's face it, mostly, aside from there being, actual trying to be a genuine love story these days, everything else is isekai. Including most of the love stories.
Oh, man.
Isekai is getting criminal at this point.
In another world, but I'm a vending machine. I'm waiting for them to actually animate that.
I've heard that one's actually pretty good.
I mean,
relatively speaking,
with a premise like that, it cannot possibly take itself seriously.
That one just sounds like you'd have fun with it. The only legitimate isekai that any of us have given praise to is Shieldy Boy.
Shieldy Boy and Slime Time. Slime Time's just awesome.
Slime Time has a weirdness enough quirk where I would call it an unorthodox isekai, because he's a slime.
There's another one that came out around a similar sort of time, I think, that hasn't been animated, but in that case the person was reincarnated as like a horrible spider monster or something.
Okay.
I don't know the details.
That sounds pretty horrible. I mean, for that guy.
Yeah.
Like, there's some fun and good isekai out there, like Slime Time and Shieldy Boy, and let's face it, Konosuba. Konosuba's enjoyable for all the wrong reasons, I suppose.
Well, Konosuba is enjoyable because it doesn't do any of the isekai things except go to another world.
Yeah.
Everything just sort of falls apart from there on.
Yeah, if it does try and do an isekai trope, it's inevitably going to take the piss out of it.
Yeah, somebody's going to suffer, and that person will be Kazuma.
That would usually be Kazuma.
Or Aqua.
Aqua just starts shrieking.
Well, Aqua's suffering is just comedy. Pure comedy.
I saw actually on YouTube the other day, it threw up a compilation video of Aqua shrieking and freaking out. The thing went for about 20 minutes. And that was from season 1.
That's pretty much what she does, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is her stick, yeah. Darkness wishes she could be shrieking and having a horrible time all the time. Unfortunately, she doesn't seem to get that wish ever.
Darkness,
she always gets stopped.
She kind of has one joke and it gets worse.
The reason Darkness works as long as she does is because she never gets to take her joke to the logical extreme. It always gets stopped right before it can, and you always wonder if this time it'll happen, but you know they never will, because then the joke wouldn't work anymore.
Yeah.
They do push her gags right up to the very edge, though. Like you haven't seen the half of it yet.
In the manga, I can imagine it just gets worse and worse.
The light novel.
Oh, sorry, yes.
The light novel.
But yeah, even towards the midway point of season 2, they're starting to get really uncomfortable to watch. Like, she's the tank of the group, and she gets her jollies tanking. Let's just say, it's very uncomfortable to watch.
Let's just say that taunting her is super effective.
Yeah. Like, she even gets called out of it in Isekai Quartet. Like, the other three shonen groups just find her extremely weird.
That would be because she's extremely weird.
That would be, yeah.
And then you have Explosion.
Megumin, who does one thing. Yeah.
Literally, that's her only skill.
I suppose in a world of people who are actually good at what they do, Kazuma just had the unfortunate to find the most useless people of all to follow around.
Like, you would think people that are specialized and very focused would be a thing that you would look for in making a party.
There's such a thing.
There may
as being
be such a
overly
thing as too
focused.
much focus. It's very the narrowness we're talking here is razor thin.
Yeah. Oh, that's unpleasant. Leave a down-leveled fate, and suddenly half my health is gone.
I'm trying to work out where the leave quest guy in this zone. I have no idea. I cannot find it.
You may not have unlocked him yet. No,
But
wait,
this
they're
is
easier to
Heavenswood
find when you've
zone.
unlocked them.
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe he's not here. I don't know. Maybe on.
Mhm.
Oh, they're not all in Foundation, are they?
Oh, they probably are.
You mean I've got to teleport back and forth? You've got to be kidding.
Yeah. I need to actually go and unlock those.
That's just depressing.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to wrap my week up there. Just in the idea of keeping things moving. So Vol, your week, sir.
Well, I don't really have a great deal to talk about other than Final Fantasy because I've always loved Final Fantasy 14 and it was very easy to suck me back into it. All people had to do was talk about it enough. And I ended up, it was hook, line, and sinker for me. I haven't actually really done anything in it though, because there's so much to do and so much I don't recognize anymore. That, yeah, for starters, they did something to the way the UI was structured such that all of my UIs were destroyed
Yes.
and my backups didn't work. Like, I imported them and it changed nothing. So yeah, that was a thing. I've had to rebuild my my UI from scratch, rearrange everything, put all the buttons back on bars for every class. But well, I actually haven't done that yet because with all the crafting and gathering classes, that's actually an awful lot of work.
It is.
I haven't relearned how to do the crafting yet either, which is going to be probably a lengthy ordeal. But yeah, I'm actually, and I'm frankly looking forward to doing it because it's just a game that I like to play. I enjoy playing it, and that seems like a strange thing to have to point out. But with MMOs, sometimes you got to wonder. So yeah, I left my paladin at level 70 at the end of where I stopped playing Stormblood, and since Fern and Ari, neither of them progressed through the story as far as I did, so I've basically been derping about on Lobby alts. Because Ari has so much more time to play than me, he left all of my low-level characters miles behind.
Likewise.
So I just switched over to Red Mage, and I've been playing that, which, while a simple class, I'm still been finding a multitude of ways to screw up using it. So yeah. But I kind of like the class. It's the simple part is nice and simple and easy to play, and the complex parts you don't need to worry about them too much if you're just zoning out and grinding fates or leave quests or whatever. So yeah, it's quite an accessible class to play, I think.
That actually reminds me, I watched a video yesterday about the dancers rotation. And
I haven't looked into it at all because it's just that I don't even understand the gauge. I look at the gauge and I'm like, what?
It's like you've got your 1-2 rotation, except your 1-2 rotation, each ability has a chance to proc into its own ability, which in turn has its another chance to proc into another rotation, and it's
Procs on procs.
It's procs upon procs upon procs, and then you add your actual dance moves into it, which turns everything into a kind of a DDR dance routine.
Gotta bust a move.
You got to bust a move, and then if you do it all right somehow, you heal things, or you kill things.
I'm pretty sure you kill things.
Bit of both. So it's I think it's a class you need to sit down and actually play to figure out what on earth is going on.
I just like their
told around
outfits.
with it yet,
So I've already decided it's going to be my ranged DPS class just because of all the promotional artwork on all the different outfits they showed.
I am going to actually roll it up with this character because, you know, giant lion man doing very dainty dances. It would be gloriously stupid. Actually, once I finish my dailies, I might go and actually unlock it and see how we go. This is going to be an absolute disaster.
Anyway, so I've been doing some dungeons with Ari, and that's involved an awful lot of Aran Vale.
So bad.
It's everybody's favorite dungeon, which is actually not really a problem anymore.
Oh, okay.
And the simple reason is that tanks are way stronger than they used to be, in particular Paladin tank. Ari's playing a Paladin. I played a Paladin. I leveled through Aran Vale in vanilla in 2.0. Ari is leveling now, and the Ari experience of a Paladin is to basically ruffle stomp everything compared to me, which is to suffer at the hands of everything, because he gets an AoE skill at level 6.
Yep.
And I get an upgrade
A
to it.
spammable AoE. Spammable AoE.
With a natural chain ability on it at level 40.
Yeah.
So basically, the thing that made Aran Vale difficult before was that if somebody mispulls or whatever, you can't salvage that situation, and there are some very large groups that you have to pull, and as a Paladin, building threat on all of them is very challenging because everybody's a derp and tries to pull them off of you because for some reason they think that's productive behavior. But yeah, so it's our time in Aran Vale has actually been, from an EXP perspective, very productive because the trash is worth a lot. There's a lot of trash to kill. It's grouped close together. You can murder all the trash, run through the instance, kill the bosses, no problem.
That said, you better hope your tank knows where the cooldown button is for one room in particular, or they're probably just going to die. That's still that one room right after the second boss, just covered in scorpions and bats and everything. It's pretty much impossible not to pull that entire room. And you got like 5 super hard hitting mobs on you.
Yeah, have fun with that.
Though our healer in that last one was pretty bad, so that might have been part of the problem.
Generally speaking, I feel that the changes to the tank have pretty much made that instance from a nightmare to perfectly manageable.
Yeah.
Because you can actually meaningfully hold aggro on things now. It's not a situation where if you pull more than 2 things, it's going to be a harrowing experience.
My experiences with Aran Vale were from a healer's perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's still entirely possible for a tank with good AoE to think that they can round up everything in the room all at once.
Yep. And then they
can't.
stand in bad breath and die.
You don't even need to stand in bad breath if you round everything up at once. There's plenty of other cancer hanging around the room to kill you.
Yup.
But yeah, this was basically us doing that last stretch where you've got to do quite a bit of grinding and get the last chunk of EXP before you hit 50 and start doing the final story quests from the initial campaign, the initial main story quest.
Mm-hmm.
So Ari's in the middle of that now, I think.
Yeah, I'm doing some miscellaneous quests that unlocked once I did the quest to finish up that. I actually have a dungeon to do, or a trial or something to do before I can move on to the level 50 stuff. But I'm just doing normal quests in the meantime. But yeah, on the bright side, we did figure out that the random roulette after you do it once for the very first bonus of the day, ain't worth touching at all.
Because you might get Sastasha.
Or Titan.
Yeah.
No loot and 300 EXP.
That said, when you haven't got your daily reward, getting Titan is great. Because you'll just get you'll fight for 5 minutes and then get your daily reward. Yeah. There's no real benefit to spamming the leveling roulette except for the EXP that you get from getting into every group. And ideally, if you are a key class that can guarantee you're going to get in a group a lot, you should just pick a high EXP yield dungeon. That doesn't jive with my previous experience, so I'm not really sure what the story is there, or whether it works differently when you under different conditions or something. I don't know, because I remember it being good, generally speaking. But yeah,
but it was we got Sastasha when everybody, even the 2 other group members, just happened to have the misfortune of getting it on the rando, just as was.
Everyone was scaled.
And it is boring.
Yes, it was.
Like,
we got...
if you want an introduction to dungeons, it's fine.
Let's put it this way. The dungeons we were getting in random were so bad for EXP, Vol went, okay, I don't care anymore, even if it's RM Vale. Just don't do this again. Just let's not do random anymore.
It put us in Titan, and I got 330 EXP. 330. I need 1.5 million to level up.
Yeah.
330 is not awesome. So,
and no loot.
Yeah.
That said, it was not the worst dungeon we did by far. Armvale is not fun by any stretch of the imagination. But the worst dungeon is 1,000 Miles of Cataracts. I don't actually know what it's called, but that's what I'm calling it.
Totorak.
It's Cataracts now.
Yeah. It's about as fun.
Yep. This is where we have discovered an official name that I've adopted for the new players that always seem to make your life horrible in a dungeon. And they are now labeled as Shawns for the convenience of quickly naming them and noticing them. Because we had a dude in that dungeon who was real good at making my life difficult when I didn't even have a map to see where I was going in a dungeon with a ton of dead ends.
Guess what? He was a Lancer.
Oh, of
named
course
Sean.
he was.
So therefore, because I've had poor experiences with Sean's in the rest of my life, no apologies to those that are actually named Sean in real life. Go get a name change. Every single one of these is now called a Sean.
Dear.
So if it slips out and you wonder what the heck I'm talking about the guy in your group that is that guy. You know what I'm talking about. That guy.
You should just call him that guy.
No, they need a proper name.
Well, there are lots of kinds of that guy, and this is the one who thinks that he can just run ahead and take on the entire dungeon by himself, and that it's everybody else's job to keep up with him and keep him alive.
Yeah.
He's the I got this bro type. Of any variety, really. The run-ahead type, the type that is silent and just keeps messing up all the time. That guy.
Yeah, that guy.
The guy you wish you could kick, but can't find a real legitimate reason to do so.
At any rate, Ari has completed his meteoric rise to 50 in the span of a week. So, yeah, he will be now doing the after max level portion of the A Realm Reborn experience, which is roughly as long as everything else put together.
Yeah.
So,
and
the dungeons are actually challenging. So,
yeah.
Yep. So I did blitz it. I was cutscene skipping to get caught up to you guys. So, well, that was not the only reason I was cutscene skipping. I probably would have watched the cutscenes if I remembered what happened since I first started the game, but I didn't. And I knew if I didn't start playing while we had momentum and everybody playing and talking about it at once, I wouldn't be able to keep going because I would putter out again. So I just sucked it up and said I'll watch it later and just started skipping cutscenes and powering through as fast as I could.
Well, Fern's up to Som R, which is level 53, and I've just dinged 53. So you're pretty close. But the problem is the big span of stuff that you have to do. Like there are more level 50 dungeons than there are leveling dungeons. So
Yeah. And that's not including hard modes.
no, that is including hard modes because the hard modes are totally different dungeons.
Effectively, they are, yeah.
Yeah, like you can't even take the same route in most of them.
Mm.
Like they're shut or whatever.
New bosses,
Um,
new trash, new loot, new route in a lot of cases, yes.
New goop.
New poop.
But some of them, their hard modes are in later expansions, depending. So,
Yeah.
yeah. At any rate, I'm, as I expected, enjoying myself. Like the only reason I stopped playing to begin with was because I didn't have the time. Because it was at that time that I started doing the high level raiding in World of Warcraft, and I couldn't do two MMOs side by side at that sort of level. But because WoW eats your life completely. And there's a huge amount of stuff to do, so I'm not bored in any sense, and most of the time that I waste is because I can't decide what I want to do next because there are so many different things.
Yeah, unlike WoW, or what WoW's become, I suppose, you can sit down for half an hour and actually still accomplish something. Even if it means you just spend half an hour faffing around in the Golden Saucer.
Yeah, I mean it's about like in World of Warcraft, it's like you can be either progressing your character or not. Those are your two options. And so in order to progress your character, if you have bad gear, then you do dailies. If you don't have bad gear, then dailies are just gold and rep, and you have to raid. Like those are the only real two activities there are. Like, this is excluding PvP because I don't really PvP anymore. But
nobody really does.
For instance, in Final Fantasy, like crafting is a real big deal. Like it's not easy.
No.
I'm having difficulty remembering how it works because there's so many parts to it, so many interlocking things. But I've got not really progressed that very far since A Realm Reborn. Like I put it on the back burner during Heavensward. So while most of my crafting classes are 50 or higher, very few of them have even hit 60. Only one of them has hit 60, in fact. So, considering the cap is probably like 80 now,
something
might
like
be
that.
a while. But yeah. So having a good time with that. In anime, I arbitrarily picked up the shonen that we were talking about before, Fire Force, which is, as far as I can tell, a complete marketing gaffe. It might not be a marketing gaffe in Japan, where the property is probably more familiar to people to a certain extent, but it was pretty much like the only thing you can tell by looking at it is, oh, it's about firefighters.
Yeah.
And that's really not the case, since in context, in universe, the firefighters actually exist, and they're not the guys that the show is about. The show is about like the named Fire Force, which are basically exorcists. Since the setting is sort of in the future, world has more or less been wrecked, but Japan is still doing pretty well since they happened to develop a miraculously efficient power system, which meant that they were prosperous while everybody else was getting wrecked. And no doubt there's some skullduggery behind that will be revealed later in the story, because it sounds like the sort of thing that would happen in a shonen. But around around that same time where everything was going bad but they were prospering, the phenomenon of spontaneous human combustion suddenly went from being like a paranormal thing that nobody's ever actually seen to something that happens with regularity to people, except that when they get consumed in flame, they also basically become demons, sort of thing. And so they needed pyrokinetic demons. So basically they needed a way to combat these things and put them down. So they basically created a force combined from members of the military, members of the civil firefighters, and members of their Church of the Sun God, who is also the god of flame, and basically created a set of different units, each of them with their own sort of focus, biases, and agendas. So the show more or less executes just like a standard shonen. Like you've got the main character who's, you know, an up and comer with his own unique talents. He's third generation pyrokinetic, which means that he can both create and control flame. Second generation pyrokinetics have much more capacity to control flame but can't create it. There are some characters like that as well, but the only thing which deviates from the standard shonen recipe is that the main character's hotshot rival is a complete doofus, as opposed to being like, you know, the usual stoic, hyper-talented guy next to the reckless, conventional protagonist dude. He's actually just like he's not without talent, but he is a complete moron. And he thinks that he's an Arthurian knight, pretty much, and is constantly trying to play up to this aesthetic, and generally speaking, fails miserably. But yeah, that's about the only deviation. Other than that, it's more or less a standard shonen. It goes through most of the standard shonen beats. You got the same sort of scenarios that you often do, where you've got multiple factions within a group that are ostensibly all on the same side, and you've got probable corruption in their own organization, that sort of thing, all the usual. But it's quite watchable. It's quite watchable. I think that it sort of falls down in a few places because their society is alien enough to real world society that it's sort of hard to empathize with.
Mm-hmm.
Like people. The people are how do I say, like I think it's the first episode, there's a guy whose wife becomes a victim of the combustion effect, and he's very well, of course he's sad that his wife is now, you know, a fire demon. He's also sort of like kind of it's kind of matter of fact to him that, oh well, this is something that happens to some people, and it's, as far as anybody knows, it's not really anyone's fault. And he's very grateful to the Fire Force that have basically put his wife to rest after they've finished beating the tar out of her, as because their world has become like this, basically, that, you know, this happens to some people and you have to defeat them, and there's nothing else for it. The only way that they can find rest, as far as anybody knows. I don't know if it turn out to be true or not, but yeah, so their society has developed in a way that's a little bit different from common experience, so it makes it a little bit harder to empathize with, but it also makes it a bit more believable, because like a lot of things, like if we take Naruto as an example, the Village Hidden in the Leaves is a military dictatorship.
Yep.
Strictly speaking, it's a military dictatorship, and nobody there acts like they live in a military dictatorship. They act like they live in suburban Japan. So the culture is not really consistent throughout. You don't have a normal suburban Japan culture in a setting where you live in a isolated village where everybody's basically at war all the time. Like you live in a village of child soldiers. Like the culture doesn't mesh properly together. So there's always a sort of like the suspension of disbelief ask there is pretty rough. So while it's a little bit harder to empathize with the setting of Fire Force, comparatively speaking to some other shonen, it's also more believable for that. So yeah, that's what I'll say on that matter. As far as other anime goes, they're all pretty much running in the same groove, and they're all pretty much terrible. There's not really anything else to say about that. Like, I mean, I guess the one about the guy who adopts the outcast devil child girl, that's sort of like at least continued on an even keel. Like, it's still about him gushing about how much he adores his daughter, and that's pretty much the show.
Is that the UFO table one?
I don't remember who made it. I'm only sort of half paying attention to it. It's not exactly a mile a minute sort of show. But yeah, it's most of the shows this season are just Other than
Yeah.
the Type Moon ones, which are of course awesome because Type Moon is awesome. They're all great. But the most of the stuff that I've seen has not been great. I've been picking at various other ones one at a time. That's why I picked up the Fire Force one last week, was because I was so bleh about everything else. Like
Yeah.
the Isekai Arifureta, the one about the guy who basically gets stuck in the bottom of the dungeon by himself. That's it launches down a sort of like skeevy path, in that obviously what he finds down there is a lolly vampire princess
Because of course you would.
who becomes completely enamored of and subordinate to him because he rescues her,
Because it's an isekai.
and she's basically totally into him, and he doesn't have any compunctions about the fact that she looks like a child. But in fact, it's not even mentioned that she looks like a child by anybody, as far as I noticed. So you could replace her with any character model, and it wouldn't make a difference to the text. But that show, it pretty much ran up on the rocks by the second or third episode, and by episode the first recap is episode 5.5, which usually if you get 5 episodes done and then you need a recap, that means there's some kind of production trouble.
Yeah, this is buying time.
So we can expect the already dodgy production values to take a nosedive after this point.
Oh dear.
So that one's in the toilet. How to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon has gotten past their first major arc and are now in their second arc. Remains to be seen how it performs. The Isekai Cheat Magician one really hasn't gone anywhere. It's incredibly typical stuff. They're calling it Uka-san Online because it's easier than trying to say the entire name.
Another
it's
word
really
with
long.
your mum.
Yeah, that one, it's just not very good. Like, they failed to execute well on the premise, and instead of the show being about it looks like they're trying to do a sort of a parody / takedown of the basic isekai premise, but they fail to do it with skill. It feels like an inept execution of the right idea, because the show's not genuinely about the conflict between the teenage son and his mother. The show is about putting his mother in the role of the protagonist of an isekai. So she always wins. She always makes the right decisions. She's more powerful than everybody else. And frankly, it just makes her really annoying. Like, the best thing that you can say about that show really is that you build sympathy with the conventional protagonist, the guy who would in any other isekai be the protagonist, because his mum's just annoying and always underfoot. Because she's like, he's not one of the major driving forces behind the current arc is the fact that he and Wise, who Wise is like your twin-tailed tsundere character who's basically joined the party because, you know, there's a sort of she and the main character snipe at each other, but it's clear that there's a certain amount of sort of undercurrent of affection there, which is not obvious, but it seems like it's probably there, and that's why they are continuing to be together. But they're both combat classes, and the current arc is being driven by the fact that neither of them can get any XP, because the main character's mother wins everything all the time, forever. Every time there's a fight, she just whomps it instantly. The game they are playing is very unbalanced. So I can understand what they're doing. What they're doing is they are putting someone a bit more ridiculous in the isekai protagonist role so that it looks more ridiculous, and they're allowing people to be more conventionally annoyed by it, but it just doesn't really execute very well, because you just feel annoyed. You just feel like, yeah, well, I mean, this is no longer believable, because the entire premise of this was that the contrivance was put together in order to try and repair bad familial relationships between mothers and their children. And in every single case, every single story arc is that their experience in this game has exacerbated their problems dramatically.
Huh. This doesn't
So
sound
the-
like it's actually going anywhere good.
No, the story really is it's recursively attacks itself in a lot of ways, and ultimately there's still the cancerous tumor of the fact that the main character's mother is the main source of fan service.
Ugh.
It's like this is not how you operate this show. I'm sorry. Like, thankfully, there's no incest undertone in the writing.
It's worrying that you
Yet,
actually need to
yet.
point that out.
Yet, I will say yet because it's still an anime. But there's no incest undercurrent yet. But it feels like they are 100% intending the viewer to add one
Why?
because people are weird.
People are horrible and disgusting, and they need to be pushed off a cliff.
Ugh.
The thing is that the main character at least rails against this constantly.
Should hope
Like
so.
he's just he basically tries to leave the plot several times because he doesn't want to see his mother in another fetish outfit.
I mean, at least he's disgusted by it.
Yeah, he's clearly deeply appalled and is troubled by the fact that his mother is sufficiently naive that she doesn't even understand. Like, because she's normal, I guess, in a sense, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't occur to her. Whereas, the main character is like the main character in every isekai is a product of otaku culture,
Yeah.
fundamentally, because that's the target audience, and the audience is supposed to identify with him. So he is vocal about the fact that it's this whole entire premise that keeps happening is so wrong. She doesn't even know because she's normal, and as a result, she does nothing to sort of buffer against it. She doesn't try and resist dressing up in a schoolgirl outfit or a swimsuit or whatever because she doesn't see anything wrong with it. Because obviously she's his mother. It doesn't matter what she wears around her son.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
Bad Japan. No, stop it.
They'll have to pass another law against this one too.
Put it down, Japan. I don't normally get onto you for stuff, but stop it.
Just
Yeah,
stab.
ultimately there's no real reason to watch the show for the reason that it is not very good.
It does kind of
there's
represent
fun-
the
Go on.
peak isekai subtitle. In another world with your mom is like, I think once you hit that point, that's game
not
over for your genre.
That's not the
it.
name though. That's not the name
I know,
of it.
I know.
No,
I'm just it's the concept of the show. When we've hit in another world with your mom, you give up. Your
I thought
genre
that-
is done.
I thought the smartphone was bad.
The smartphone was pretty bad.
No, I think this is below on the totem pole, below the vending machine.
I don't know. There is
I
in
think the
another
vending
world with
machine one sounds
consent.
way more fun.
Oh dear.
At any rate, yeah, that one's bad as well. I haven't watched the this season's entry in the Index franchise. Mao Summer Retry is actually been quite watchable simply because it is a very conventional isekai show that doesn't have all of the exacerbated flaws that you're seeing from shows trying to be increasingly ironic about being isekai.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one about that one's a cross between a standard isekai show and the one about the hero who picks up the little girl, because in this case the demon lord picks up the little girl. And I think that pretty much the core gag throughout it, it's not an overt gag, like nobody laughs about it or anything, but the core gag in it is that the little girl obviously adores her demon lord daddy, and just the sight gag of a little girl calling her father figure demon lord is kind of entertaining.
Yeah.
But it's also it has its charm. I think, despite being like the crappiest looking in a lot of cases and having generally poor production values and a really janky premise, it's actually, because it's been relatively consistent, it's been relatively watchable as well. Although it is incredibly boring if you find the isekai stuff incredibly boring. Account of he does everything the same way every isekai protagonist does, more or less, which is basically build a power base. And it's got some interesting little things, like sometimes when he wants to intervene in various situations and he doesn't have the capacity to do so, he will tremulously hit the change character button, which
Okay.
he was the administrator of the game, and so he once upon a time had all the powers, so he's got access to a couple of extra commands he shouldn't have, and one of those is change character. The problem is when he changes character, he changes into a different character. However, that character behaves in accordance with the way he wrote that character. He has no control.
This sounds terrible.
And it just so happens that the character that has become attached to that command is this incredibly corny, like biker gang rebel type character from a really corny Japanese high school drama.
What do they call
Except
him
except he talks about justice all the time.
Like full pompadour, biker jacket.
I can't remember if he has a pompadour or not, but
He'd
he does have a bad.
pompadour.
He does have a bad haircut and an incredibly large jacket he wears as a cape, which has a dragon emblazoned on the back.
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay.
Like he's super corny. But and so basically, this guy he needs this other character's power, so he'll switch to him for a while, and then he'll basically implode with shame as soon as he switches back in private because of how he was behaving. So yeah, that has been quite entertaining, and it also is kind of amusing that there's basically the society in the region that he's engaged with building a power base is ruled effectively by three sisters, the three holy maidens. The youngest of them is a brat who has basically become attached to his party because, well, it seems pretty clear that she lacks an authority figure as well, and that's why she's a brat. So having her attached to the party has softened her a little bit. But she's basically the main character's in with the political situation. The two elder sisters, one of them is basically like a Mad Maxian style, she's incredibly brutal, thuggish sort of tomboy woman. Clearly, her design has taken a few cues from Mordred, from the Fate universe, and most of her followers are men who are masochists, who like having her abuse them.
Because
Mordred only works because of Necro Bro.
I'm talking about in terms of appearance.
Okay.
Aside from the flat-chestedness, but she's basically horrible to everybody, and then completely falls utterly head over heels for the alter ego character who's super corny. Like, because apparently that sort of person who is super corny and doesn't exist in real life because they would cringe themselves out of existence is exactly her type. So
okay,
she's desperately in love with someone who functionally doesn't exist, and the eldest sister is pretty much the one who's trying to hold crap together, but she's not really taken seriously by the other lords and is pretty much afraid of the demon lord, except the demon lord has the hots for her, basically. Not like intensively so, but like he's clearly a little bit attracted to her. Except that, he has to stay in character because he's the demon lord. And she's the holy maiden, his arch nemesis. So
yeah,
there are some interesting things in there in the vein of conventional isekai stuff. And the fact that isekai has gotten so bad that conventional isekai stands out as entertaining is rather troubling, to say the least.
It pretty much is, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't really have anything else to say on the anime this season that is printable, so to speak.
All right.
Because pretty much awful.
We should go to a break.
All right, let us do that.
We'll be right back after some Muzak. And we're back. Squeaky chair, as I sit up straight.
Does squeaky chair.
Das squeaky chair. So, yeah. I think we were in Vols Week when we went to a break.
Yeah, I don't really want to say much else. I need to work on finding where I am in the city so that I can get out.
Foundation is, well, actually, let's face it, all the cities in Final Fantasy 14 are pretty mazy.
I find Foundation is particularly bad.
It is.
It would not be so bad if the cities were all one zone. I get why they had to split them up. I looked up a small mini-series about the history of Final Fantasy 14 and how things changed and understand why they split them up. But
Yeah.
it just makes them incredibly frustrating to navigate when you're not sure which end of the city you need to go to.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least Kugane is open plan, more or less. If you want to go and wander around in the alleys, you'll still get lost, but most of Kugane you can more or less see, and you can climb up on something high if you get lost. That tends to be more favorable for that sort of behavior. Kugane is the main city in Stormblood.
Right.
I see.
Yeah. It's this big kind of Asian-inspired thing. So, one thing I am enjoying, actually, is I've started to... I've unlocked flying in one zone so far, and all of your ground mounts, or almost all of them, become flying mounts. And some of them do it in the most ridiculous ways. Like, you've got the Elbist, I think it is, from the fish guys. It basically swims through the air. You've got your chocobos, your Grand Company chocobo you need to do a quest to, which I just did then to make it fly. And then you get something like the Behemoth mount, which it just flies by not giving a flying crap. The thing just runs. It just runs straight in the air and doesn't care. It's going to fly because it says so.
You know, probably my
Are you
favorite
going to argue
bit.
with it?
Nope.
My favorite bit of semi-official lore in Final Fantasy XIV is effectively there's a speed limit enforced across all regions, and the reason you can make your mount go faster is you convince the local government to raise your personal speed limit.
Yeah, that one's a bit silly.
You're a law-abiding adventurer, aren't you?
No.
Broadly? You know, I mean...
Yeah, I mean,
suits?
sure, at the point where you are in the story, you're wanted in every part of the nation.
Well, I
But you're
am
still
apparently a
law-abiding, right?
regicide. I obey the law when it suits me.
I'm not as big of a lawbreaker as some others. That's about the best I can do.
There are people who are worse than me.
Just wait till you're a regicide.
Yeah. You tolerate my existence because I kill people who are worse than me.
Yeah.
And that's why you will raise the speed limit on my chocobo.
Well, apparently for the most part, you don't actually kill people when you fight them. Unless it outright says you do.
You defeat them.
I mean, even though I'm actively running around and actually shooting people with this class, or you're chopping them up with swords, unless the plot says so, you don't kill them.
You're shooting them with friend bullets and hitting them with friend swords.
Exactly. I mean, it gets worse actually in the superhero MMOs, which are the same thing. You only arrest them when you beat them. Well, except for unless you're playing villain in City of Heroes, where you just knock them out. But when you blow someone to tiny little bits or hit them in the face with a forklift, apparently they somehow survive that. I don't know.
They're fine.
That gameplay story segregation, I suppose.
They're fine.
Right, what am I doing?
It's like Yakuza when you chuck somebody out of a window and from like 20 stories up, and canonically it's just Kazuma never kills people.
Yeah, except for that one guy, which he gets blamed for.
Never mind the guy who you literally broke the spine of by stamping his neck into the ground. No. Kazuma never kills people.
Well, you didn't kill him with the act of throwing him out the window, I suppose. The landing killed him, probably.
Yeah, he was killed by the ground.
Exactly.
I suppose.
We need common sense ground control.
Let's lock the ground up. The ground kills people.
Second Amendment doesn't say anything about the ground.
I'm not sure how you
Anywho.
can bear the ground as an arm. That would be fairly impressive.
I don't know. How about you just cover the ground in bears? Yes, I know that was really dumb. So, Ari,
that one took a second. Yeah. So, yeah, like they've said, all my free time this week has been going into Final Fantasy XIV in an effort to finally actually start playing this game.
But just
I've had
the story, and the story's so good.
So here's the story with me not doing the story for this particular moment. It has, I don't know how many times I have tried to start playing this game. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
I have kept trying to start playing this game, and for one reason or another, I get distracted, or I'm really busy at the time, or it's just not a good point for me to be playing MMOs. I have quit playing the video game. And this has resulted in me inching my way through the first, 12th of the story, what I thought would be closer to the first quarter of the story. This turned out not to be true.
It's probably closer to maybe the first 32th.
Yeah, so I thought I had missed a whole lot more of the story than I had when I picked the game back up. And I just said, okay, the only way I'm going to continue to play the video game is if I just keep going. And get the, it's like once you get the engine going, after you primed it, and you yank on that cord and your lawnmower starts up, it's easier to turn it back on again after you've already got it going for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to get to that point. The problem was that something had to be sacrificed to get the necessary time to get that many play hours in. And since I had already missed a good chunk of the story, or forgotten a good chunk of the story rather, from what I thought was a good chunk of the story, from starting and restopping and inching my way forward, I decided I would just come back and watch it later.
Yeah.
There was a slight problem with that plan, as my two co-hosts have pointed out. I was not actually that far into the story.
You were right at the beginning.
Yeah, so I thought I was much further in than I was, but I didn't stop to think about it, because if I stopped to think about it too hard, I wouldn't have got going and playing the game. So I wound up in a situation where I am now playing catch up with the story and cutscenes during lunch breaks at work, and watching all the scenes I skipped.
If you poke around YouTube, there are actually
content.
some really good recaps out there.
I don't want a recap, though. Like, a recap isn't going to get me into the ballpark of the same experience, or at the very least the right headspace to
Well, it won't be your
experience the
character
future.
on screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A recap ain't going to get you into the right headspace to start experiencing the story in real time once I do get caught up.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be something where I've got to sit down and basically rewatch all the cutscenes and reread everything, which is fine. There's a little globe in your hotel room that'll let you do that.
Yeah.
It's going to take some time. And I'm at a point where once I realized in how sorted everything was and remembered how to play the game, I just decided, okay, I'll just have to set aside time and just suck it up and do that at some point. And it just kept going and trying to get to 50 has been the goal. Because these guys are all like level 53-ish, and so I have poured every bit of free time I've had into this game. And so this has amounted to probably about 6 hours a day in Final Fantasy XIV. Not a small amount.
Nope.
Including rejigging my entire sleep schedule to be able to be awake and do it.
So you've been clearing out quest hubs along the way too, haven't you?
Only when I am... Only sometimes.
Okay.
If it's a quest hub I know I will be returning to a lot, I'll clear it out just to get the quest markers out of the map.
Yep.
Or I'll clear out a quest hub if I have caught up to the main story quest and need to pull ahead again to get over a hump.
Okay, that's good. You don't want to clear out everything, otherwise you're going to leave nothing for yourself when you come back for another class.
Yeah, those are the only times I've cleared out a quest hub. And the reason I've been able to level so quickly due to all of this was A, skipping cutscenes,
Mm-hmm.
B, first completion bonuses on literally everything I do. So there's always a first completion bonus, which effectively doubles my EXP.
Yup.
18 hours of rested EXP a day, because I've been playing in single chunks for the most part, except for today where it's been Saturday and I've had more than 6 hours to play. And I have the main story quest itself and these full quest hubs, which are not something these two have access to while leveling. So I have a whole bunch of sources of EXP income they don't have. So
Yep.
I've been able to blast all the way from level 24 to 50 in a week.
So
And
it's-
you know what?
I tried to keep up, but in the like 1 hour that I have to play each day, that's not really
Not gonna happen.
Yeah, this and to get this 6 hours, it involves some serious sleep schedule rejigging. Like I was going to bed at 8 o'clock and waking up at 3 in the morning to be able to get the hours I needed to play.
That's not good.
Like, oh, this is the kind of crap you got to do when you have an adult.
Yeah, you have to make time.
And adulting sucks.
Yes, it does.
In case we haven't
Man.
belabored that point enough.
Remember when we were in college and we could just like do 1 to 60 in a few days?
Yeah,
No, we did 1 to 80 in 6 days, didn't we?
yeah. We did 1 to 80 in a week. Oh, that's right. That was a stunt we pulled because everybody in VTW wondered how the hell we did it.
You did it all in one hit without sleeping.
That
Also-
was how we solidified our credentials for leading the VTW guild.
Also, alcohol.
Oh yeah, we don't remember Zangarmarsh.
Nobody remembers Zangarmarsh.
Or Hellfire Peninsula.
Or most of Hellfire
No,
Peninsula.
I remember that the Witch Doctor song was involved in Zangarmarsh.
Bum, bum, bum,
I think
bum.
that's where it became a thing. I don't remember.
So,
We were
yeah.
really, really drunk through the first half of BC.
Well, the thing is that this was at a time where we had just faced all of that content repeatedly, so we couldn't do it again. not without something to buffer the suffering.
Yeah.
Like so we elected to simply purge it from our memories. And I think we succeeded. I don't remember us doing Zangarmarsh at all, but when I got back the next day, the whole quest hub was cleared out for everywhere.
I remember approximately, like in my mental footage, I have recorded approximately 6 seconds of data from Zangarmarsh. But I've got a couple of frames. I've got one of those big Strider things. I've got one of the camp, and I've got one of me getting lost trying to find a way up onto one of the towers. That was it. That's all I remember.
Mushroom.
Yeah, it was we
Oh, well.
I'm not even sure how we did it. Probably just from muscle memory of doing Zangarmarsh so many dang times. Like the amount of attention we had to pay at that point to quests in World of Warcraft was negative.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've also got to remember that the quests in Burning Crusade have changed less than any other content in the game.
It is still as
Yeah.
close to vanilla content as you're going to get.
And it was still only one expansion behind what we were at the time. We were in Wrath. So
But Wrath was like a radical change
Mm.
to
yeah.
the way things were done. And at that time, we were in the transition period from Wrath to Cataclysm, so the world was getting wrecked,
Yep.
Yeah. And
and there were elementals everywhere,
so the world
destroying the
hadn't
quest
changed.
hubs.
Yeah, the world hadn't changed yet, but we did 1 to 80 in a week with no quest hubs effectively, because every time we got there, we'd have to wait for 10 minutes for everybody to respawn. Because on Azeroth, Deathwing was busy making elementals show up.
And occasionally just killing everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything suddenly is on fire. Whole zones are wiped out.
We tried to get that Chivo. I think we got it finally.
Yeah.
Yeah, stood in fire.
Stood in fire.
Yeah. So yeah, it is. And I had a thought about relating to that kind of WoW experience. Like that kind of WoW experience was what I would call super duper mega hardcore play. What I've done with Final Fantasy this week has felt like super duper mega hardcore play, but relative to what we used to pull in WoW, this is nothing.
That's called getting old, Aristiel. That's where all the joints are now creaking.
Like, this is legit nothing compared to the stunts we used to pull in World of Warcraft.
Yeah. Can't do
And
that
it-
no more.
It made me legitimately sad. I thought I put in all this work and effort, and it turned out it's not nearly as much time put in as I thought it was when I actually tallied up the hours.
We can't go back there. We can't go back there. We have to be adults now.
Yeah. It's just having that thing called work interrupt your life. It just puts a stopper on all that so hard.
I never
It's
asked
such-
for this.
I didn't want to grow up. None of us did. Why do we have to grow up, man?
Anywho, did you
Yeah.
actually accomplish anything really this week?
It was all kind of just quest to quest to quest blur, going as fast as I could to catch up to you guys.
Yep.
So we could play together.
Which
And
I would like to note publicly we never asked him to do.
No.
Like, just in case you guys think that we were putting pressure on him or something to play in this
No,
way,
no.
we weren't.
This is just the Ari personality type of Ari finds a goal. Ari will accomplish that goal if he decides he's going to start doing it.
Yeah, I think both of our reactions when Ari told us what we was doing is, you're doing what?
Like, it is just the type of person I am and I've always been. I just see something, I decide to do it, and I don't stop until it's done or it becomes literally impossible, and even then I'll keep going for a while.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, they're all the way always talking up there about the content they do up there at level 50 or whatever. I guess I should catch up to them. And I just kind of, I didn't think anything about it at the time, but by the time I got 2 levels into it, I realized I can't stop myself now. We're doing this thing. I just kind of looked at my clock and like, when do I have to sleep to mess up my sleep schedule enough to make this happen?
Yeah.
So
Even as it is,
yeah.
we're all really behind the curve. Like the max level is 80 now.
I'm not in any hurry. Unlike Araceel.
Yeah, so I will put the brakes on once I get to 50 and get the MSQ caught up to at least the next expansion.
Yeah, once you get to level 50 stuff, well, I mean, we can actually come back and help you with anything at any time. Well, any dungeon at any time, but at level 50 we can come back and help you with actual world content.
Yeah, what I'll be able to do is once I hit 50, I'm going to direct my focus entirely to the MSQ, and just once that's done, I'll put the brakes on really hard.
One caveat to that: once you hit level 50, you need to put the MSQ on hold and go do Hildebrand.
Okay,
that's pure story content, though. I don't know if it's very Ari.
It's very, very dumb.
While I am normally an advocate for high octane story content that is just all story all day every day, work happened, and suddenly that became not something that I have to plan for. Yeah. So Hildebrand may wait for a time when I want to take in the Hildebrand quest, because y'all have talked so much about it. I don't want to skip it.
Oh, but give you a warning at least for the level 50 Hildebrand quest is it does unlock, I think it's 2, maybe 3 really dumb trials. Like, they're really cool fights, but they're extremely dumb.
And that's why you see there's a green chicken called Enkidu following me around.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have Tiny Ultros who looks like he's up to something.
Yeah, Vol pulled out this companion pet while we were waiting on the duty finder to pop in the middle of Gridania, and I'm like, was Enkidu always a chicken in Final Fantasy? I don't remember this.
This one he is. Well, he's also not.
So that was a thing. But yeah, the main thing to talk about in Final Fantasy with the experience so far has been the group content that I have done. Both either with you guys. I think most of it was with Vol. I think I did one group. Well, we did some Fate stuff with you, Fern. And
yeah, we did some Fates.
Low level questing shenanigans. And other than discovering that fall damage is the thing and frogs jump.
Fall damage is only fatal in combat.
Yeah.
And so, you reenacting Konosuba's opening acts.
Yeah, jumped down and got death grip by a frog, and that's all she wrote. So that's about the only thing I really did with Fern, because he was busy with no internet this week. On my own, I picked up with, or rather, I got the MSQ rolling, and the night after I got everything together and was back on track, Vol got on, and we did the 1,000 Miles of Cataracts. And
so boring.
The 1,000 Miles of Cataracts is the most visually uninteresting dungeon you've ever seen in your life, and the most mechanically boring thing I've ever played in an MMO ever.
It's brown tunnels. It's all brown tunnels.
It's endless brown tunnels. And back in the day, in 1.0, the entire game was like that.
Yeah.
Not just the dungeons, like all the outdoor zones are like that as well.
So yeah.
We want to play 14 Classic. We want 1.0. No.
Ugh.
I'm just so
yeah.
glad that Yoshi P shut that down.
He just laughed. It's
He just laughed
that's
at
a
it.
really bad idea.
It is such a
Oh,
bad
man.
idea. We love you,
But
Yoshi
yeah.
P. Don't ever change.
But yeah, 1,000 Miles of Cataracts, that dungeon was awful. I never want to go back there if I don't have to.
You will.
Holy crap.
You will end
I'm
up
sure.
back there. Even if you try to avoid it, believe me, you end up
Bad-
back there.
Bad as that dungeon is, sometimes I do like to go back to those ones just because there's something you can mindlessly do.
Yeah, like I could do that place in my sleep.
Yeah,
But-
that is true. Like when it comes to playing when heavily inebriated, I usually don't try and do anything which has been produced in the last 2 expansions because I'll get my butt kicked.
Yeah.
Some of the fights that have come out are really complicated. Like they blow most of the World of Warcraft dungeon stuff out of the water. It's not even fair to try and do them without a group that don't all have their wits about them. Like it would be irresponsible of me to go in and try and play
Mhm.
without my full faculties.
Yeah. So yeah. And yeah, but yeah, the 1,000 Miles of Cataracts also, for some reason, puts slowy goop all over the floor. That doesn't do
Yeah.
anything but slow you.
Yeah, I never understood that. It's like it doesn't interact with any mechanics or anything.
It's just
like
there.
it's just there to harass you constantly.
I was thinking like maybe we have to not step in the goop because it'll hurt you, and Balls just like no, it just slows you down.
Yeah.
Like what?
It
And not all
makes
that
the
much.
dungeon take longer. It makes your experience slightly longer. That's all.
It is.
Like, I'm pretty sure that dungeon is basically it's not the creatures that are trying to kill you. They're just trying to wear you down out of attrition.
It is
like
there
eventually
as
this
enough of an
person is just gonna
inconvenience.
eventually the person's just gonna log off in frustration because they're sick of the dungeon.
Yeah.
The boss isn't even really all that interesting. Okay, it's a giant scorpion, and you have to break his tail off before he.
But we
does
fought
the
like
thing,
4 of those at least as trash before we got to him.
Yeah.
He's just 20% bigger than the other ones.
As much as we like to hype up how good the Final Fantasy XIV dungeons are, there are exceptions.
Yeah, well, they're 1.0 exceptions.
They are 1.0
Yeah.
Like
exceptions.
the
and
ones
1.0
the ones
was
that have
bad.
not the ones that don't have hard mode dungeons ever made out of them are ones that are incompatible with revamping. And they're
Mhm.
incompatible because they consist of 1.0 code which can't be touched or it'll break.
If you look at it funny, it'll break.
1,000 Miles of Cataracts. Ugh. So yeah, and then we have I did Hakuei Manor and Brave Flux Long Stop. And I generally liked both of these dungeons. I wasn't too hyped about Hakuei Manor.
Mhm.
The last boss was cool. She was a simple fight, but
Her hard mode
mostly-
is interesting.
the big problem I had with this dungeon was when you first do a dungeon, you don't have a map.
Oh,
And we could not, for the love of us, find some of these keys. Because I was in there with a bunch of people that hadn't done the dungeon before either.
Hakuei Manor is actually probably the only dungeon in a game I've ever seen where just by navigating it, you need to half at least once.
Yeah. And then when we get to the bottom, I'm like, oh, we got to run all the way back up there. And one of the party members, only one had run it before in the past, but they were a returning player and only remembered the bosses. So like, oh, right, we can just use return to get back to the start.
Yeah.
And the Sean of the group, of course, did not do this and took his sweet ass time running his butt back to the start of the dungeon.
Yep. There's always one.
And yeah, so that was a fairly clean run, but really marred by the point we couldn't figure out where to go.
I mean, well, you got to consider though, like that Hakuei Manor is basically the equivalent of Razorfin Crawl for for Final Fantasy. Like, I mean, if you're going to compare the two,
yeah. So, and then a big step up in quality was Brave Flux Long Stop.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed this dungeon, like the whole way through. The final boss, especially, I liked. Although my experience is colored because I watched the video before I did any of these because I'm tanking them, and I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the Sean of the group.
Yep.
So I got in there and in addition to watching the video, the game also nowadays will pop up big screw you text that says, "Move the dragon out of the poison. It's going to heal him." I don't know if it only pops up for the tank or not, but the healer was just ecstatic that a new player tank knew to move the dragon out of the poison and was being way too happy about what I was doing for me to feel comfortable.
Well, of course he would. As I've played a healer in this game, he's just discovered the Holy Grail.
Well, yeah, because basically what happens is the healer. What normally happens if you're the healer in Brave Flocks and you end up with a group that don't have a clue what they're doing, is the tank will not move the dragon out of the goop. The healer will run out of mana because the fight goes on so long, and then get blamed.
Yes.
Yeah, so that healer was way too happy, and although I appreciated the fact that they were glad I took the time to, do what you should do if you have other people's time on your hands, they were a little too happy about it. It made me a little uncomfortable by the end of it.
Well, we don't have heirlooms in this game, so you can't just walk into the leveling content and expect that you can ruffle all over it with your stats.
Yeah. So, after Brave Flocks, I skipped Sunken Temple and Cutter's Cry. Cutter's Cry is the only dungeon I haven't done yet.
I can't remember anything about Cutter's Cry.
But I've unlocked it.
Dumb and bad.
I hate it.
From what I've watched in the video of it, it's fairly simple. I'm not too worried. Sunken Temple was me and Vol being complete and total. Yeah, we were bad.
I was like, what does this do? And I spawned a bunch of dudes.
Like, we're trying to figure out what the puzzle was. Neither of us read the inscription at the start of the dungeon or remembered it. I think we clicked on it and totally forgot what it was 3 seconds later and walked away from it. And we get to the point where we're supposed to use the artifacts in the dungeon, and we're just kind of hoping somebody else took the time to read it because we forgot. and when we get there, Vol goes, "Oh, I wonder what happens if I just push a button."
You don't do that.
Five bombs spawn on his head. And I have to go pick them all up and drag them up to the group who's wondering where we are waiting at the boss store. That was bad. So then we had Stone Vigil is probably my favorite dungeon I've done so far, just in total as a dungeon. I enjoyed every part of Stone Vigil. I thought that all the boss fights were really good. I thought especially the last and second boss fight were really good. I would not want to go in that place and get stuck with a bunch of Shawns because that would be a nightmare.
I had nightmares of that place.
If I have to type in text, "Somebody please for love of Gucci get on the cannon," then it probably wouldn't be so fun. But I didn't have to deal with that, so it was okay. Zamael Darkhold is kind of just bland. The mechanics are... It has mechanics, is all I can really say about it. Stand in the perp. Stand in the perp drink. That's the whole mechanic of the dungeon, basically. And the rest is all just, don't stand in the fire. It's not the worst dungeon I've experienced through here, but it's definitely not the best. And Aram Vale is a meme that I even knew about. It's so infamous before I even went into it. And Beanville did it twice. And the first time we queued for it, I'm like, he really didn't want to do it. I'm like, it'll be show content if we talk about Aram Vale and we go in and we get a horrible group and everything goes horribly. But it turned out to not be that bad. Although, as a new tank without any kind of gear or experience, really, and still figuring things out, the biggest scare in Aram Vale is not any of the actual mechanics. It's how hard the trash hits. Like, even if you can pick it all up and make it smooth, if your healer can keep you up. In our second run in particular, our healer was not very good. And it got really scary sometimes. And there's one pull in particular after the second boss where I've only done the pull twice, to be fair. And I'm not sure there's a way to pull that room safely without aggroing 5 mobs that all hit like tanks.
Nope.
And so... the first time we went through there, I didn't have any cooldowns up, and so I was doing weird hopping shenanigans to try and keep them busy, so I wouldn't take damage. And the second time I went in with full cooldowns and almost died with all of them popped.
That's just nasty.
Yeah, that pool's nasty bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a boring dungeon. The mechanics are tedious and not very interesting. Anything that requires me to click a button as the tank that can be interrupted by the boss hitting me just hacks me off. In general, that's the worst part of tanking that dungeon.
That used to be the whole Paladin's entire life.
Yeah, that was very, very obnoxious. And yeah, but it wasn't as bad as people made it out to be, and I guess that is mostly due to just them trimming the ability list down to stuff that is, reasonable, and giving you proper tools at the right levels to be able to perform your role more efficiently.
But the memes,
and I can see how the memes got birthed there. I very carefully pulled that place, even on the second run when I was more comfortable with it, because I could see the patrol, I could see the goop that's going to kill everybody. And I can see the groups in between us and the patrol, and I'll just grab the patrol at the end of another pull and pull it anyway, even though I can read the minds of the people in our group. Why are they pulling extra trash? Because if I don't, you're going to pull it. This is an old school tank philosophy. There is no such thing as clearing too much trash.
Yep.
Never, for any reason. And the reason you do it is because if you can complain that you pull too much trash, you don't have to complain that you keep wiping.
Oh, I made a terrible mistake.
And it's just the way I've always done things, and you ain't gonna break me out of that habit unless there's some kind of timer reward, and then I'm probably not gonna do the dungeon because speedrun anything is not fun. But yeah, Armvale's bad.
All right.
But not that bad. So yeah, that's my current Final Fantasy XIV experience. I'm level 49 now. I'm on the last quest for the main MSQ before I get bumped to the 50 stuff. I've got to do a piece of instance content that I will watch a video for before I do. So I'm kind of stuck running in circles around Vesper Bay until the show's over when I'll queue for it and can actually pay attention.
Have you been watching any particular videos, like any particular persons?
The chick with the most views on her videos, the one
Ms. Tech.
Yeah.
Yeah,
she's got a bad reputation. I'm not quite sure why. I think that people consider her a sellout or something. I don't know.
Yeah, she's just had the most views, and her videos were short and to the point. And
but she refers to everything as being spicy. So that's sort of like, well, I mean, what do you mean by that?
It's a bit of a vague term.
But anything that hits hard, she just refers to as spicy.
It's spicy damage.
I did not think about that. I stole spicy cleave from her, but I can understand spicy cleave. That's an idiom I've heard from WoW. So I think that was actually either a move or a descriptor used by somebody in that one. But I did not know she used it for anything more than cleaves. I've only ever heard spicy cleave before. From
spicy cleave is the most common.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain.
She does use it for anything that eventually she starts using it for anything that hits sufficiently hard to justify being called spicy, whatever that threshold is.
Yeah. But yeah, her videos are the most time efficient for get to dungeon, need to queue for dungeon, watch video while queue.
Yeah, she gets to the point really quick when it's good.
And whenever Vol wasn't in the group for the dungeons, I would always open the group with, "All right, I watched a video before I queued, but it's my first time here, so if I start going the wrong way or doing something stupid, tell me." And people seem to like that. Like it's amazing how amicable people can be if you just are upfront with them about the truth of the situation and don't try to pretend you're an MLG pro at the game.
That applies very much at the low levels, but if you're clearing current content and you open with that, people get really scrotty about it.
Probably.
That's been my experience. It's like because at that point you've got the maximum concentration of people who think they know everybody else's jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I found that a lot in Stormblood. There'd be people who, would always be insisting that I was doing it wrong, no matter what I was doing.
Yeah, I will not be doing max level content without at least one person I know in the group. And max level group content, that is. That's the thing that's not happening. So yeah. It's been a good experience so far. I have got caught up on I've rewatched quite a few anime, and by rewatched I mean it was on in the background while I was running around in circles in Final Fantasy. The big one, I listened to the dub of Gossek. That was interesting. Not a very good dub, not a very bad dub either. Very mediocre. Has one of the most wishy-washy voice actresses I always have kind of put in that box where it's all on her ADR director whether she's good or not, and her ADR director in Gossek is incredibly wishy-washy. Some episodes she's really good, some episodes she's really not, and it's ear grating.
Ugh.
And I forget her name. I know she's Asian because Southern in race. Haha.
That
Afia
doesn't
Yu.
narrow it down much.
Yeah, Afia Yu, and she plays Victorica in that series. And that series is okay, from what I remember from back in 2011 when I last saw it on Abo's recommendation. So it's not great. It's not bad. I'm not going to go into detail about it because we're running late on time. And that's pretty much it for meaningful media that I can talk about. There's a bit more I could go into, but I'll put it on the back burner to do next week if we need it.
Okay. We should look at some news then.
Yeah. So I don't know if y'all added anything to the bits and pieces I stuck in there.
Well, not really. Gamescom
no.
happened, but nothing super.
Gamescom did a Gamescom. Like Gamescom was just. It was like every year. It's like, oh well, at least Gamescom is coming to break up the news drought, and then Gamescom singularly fails to break up the news drought.
I think the biggest announcement that really caught my attention was Kerbal Space Program 2 from that, and I'm just thinking, you monsters.
The biggest announcement I saw there was already released the day of Gamescom when they announced it.
Oh?
The Yakuza 3, 4, and 5 remaster with, by the way, the bad localizations completely redone.
Yay!
And all the minigames added back in. Yay!
You got to have that Yakuza nonsense. It's just not Yakuza without it.
So hold on, how do these ones work chronologically?
They go 1, 2, they go in order. It's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But yeah, we have the HD PS4 remakes for 1 and 2. These are remakes that were released for the PS4 as well, but they're just remasters. They're not full remakes like 1 and 2 were.
I seem to be taking an excessive amount of damage in this fate.
But yeah, the significance of this particular announcement is the original releases for these games in the US, the ones that we did get, were awful, horrible, and they cut content.
Yep.
Like they were and it was not even a censorship thing. It was just they were given so little time to localize these games, they just had to do what they could. And things like the trivia minigame that had too much text to translate, they just had to say we can't do it, and just went on to the next thing, and just cut it from the game entirely in the West. So the remake will add all of that back in, fix the localization errors that came up with the hyperspeed localization. And I feel bad for the guy that did the localization for 3 especially. He has apologized for it over and over again and explained the situation in detail, and he was not happy with it either. So I don't blame him as much as I could. But that's the only Gamescom announcement I saw that stuck out. And that's already out. You can go buy it right now on PS4. They'll be releasing 4 and 5 later, but you can buy 3 right now, and you get all the games if you buy the pack.
Nice. How much are they actually asking for it?
$40 for the pack, I think.
That's pretty good. That's a lot of content.
That is too much content.
Probably too much, yeah.
If you really like completing those games, you can get really good at Mahjong.
Well, you don't have to accomplish the same dramatic feats of Mahjong in every game, do you?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
But isn't that like playing enough poker to draw a royal flush 5 times or something?
I had to get 7 orphans in a hand, basically, on opening hand for one of them. Do you know how many times I had to see that loading screen? It was a lot.
All right. There's a bunch of other stuff from Gamescom, but it's all kind of just stuff that just flew under the radar.
You can stand up in Death Stranding and pee.
Yeah, that's apparently
Like,
a thing.
That means that Kojima went to his dev team. Like, there's some poor dev that he went to and said, "I need you to put in a button that lets you pee."
And that dev said, "Oh, I played Conker's Bad Fur Day."
I don't think that the tone of Conker's Bad Fur Day and Death Stranding are supposed to be coincident.
I suppose, given what we know about Death
There
Stranding.
seem to be thematic differences between the two, I'm just saying.
I don't know. Everyone seems to be excessively drunk on the dev team. Or at least on the writing staff.
Well, that's probably the only condition in which it makes sense.
Exactly.
It requires a certain Zangarmarsh type mindset.
Gotta go that dang much.
The game appears to be about putting babies in bottles, like
Because reasons? Also shadow monsters, because reasons?
And now standing up and peeing.
Again, because reasons.
mind you, Ico probably would have been a lot easier if you could just stick Yorda in a bottle and strap her to your torso.
It would have saved a lot of time. Like, the entire game.
We have fixed the escort quest, people.
Stick them in a
But
bottle.
we fixed it in Resident Evil 4. Ashley get in the trash can.
Yeah.
That is how we fixed the escort mission.
You sit in the
Please
trash
do
can,
not
I'm going to
deviate
go
from
fight
this.
Midget Napoleon.
Yeah, like just put the escortee in the trash can until you're done. That is how you fix the escort quest. And then you take the escort out when you don't have to do anything anymore.
Alright, we've got, let me see, we've got a game actually coming out of exclusive from the Epic Store.
Yes, a weird twist with Supergiant. So, as many people are aware, Supergiant made Bastion and Pyre and Transistor.
Mhm.
I've been a big fan of Transistor's gameplay for a long time. That's my favorite of the bunch. A lot of people love Bastion as their favorite. Point is, they make a whole lot of games people like. So they made another game, but the problem with people that like their games is it's a very small number of people that actually buy them.
Yeah.
So they didn't have no money to fund the next game they wanted to make. So they took the Epic limited exclusivity deal to make Hades. And from what I can tell, that wasn't even enough money to finish the game.
Wow.
Because by the time it's come out of early access, or out of Epic exclusivity, it was effectively on the Epic Game Store just as early access for its entire time, and it's coming onto Steam Greenlight still in early access with a full release next year.
That's pretty much a full year, right? It's already been on the
Yep.
Epic Game Store since like December last year or something.
It was one of their launch games, I think, for the Epic Game Store.
Yes, it was.
So a year later, they're still going to be in early access. It's just they'll be on early access on Steam as well.
Yeah.
So now they've got a whole... Oh, hello. Now they've got a whole second income of bonus money, I suppose.
Yeah, so in a way, this doesn't offend me as much as it would be with other Epic exclusives. Number one, because it's not Epic scooping up a established franchise. It's a new one. And number two, all Epic got was effectively the alpha for a year.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we got another announcement this week of a game being exclusive to the Epic Store, and that is Soulstorm. Not that one, the actual good Edward one. We mentioned it last week. But
The name is cursed.
it's worth noting particularly that they came out and they actually put their reasoning on the table, and they did it in a not condescending douchebag way. Looking at you, Ooblets. So they basically said, look, we've been stuck in development hell for the last year, and Epic has come along with a big bag of money that will actually allow us to get the game out. So, yeah. And that's basically the entire article. That's more or less what it said. So I can't fault them for taking the deal. Actually, I can't really fault any indie dev for taking the Epic deal.
Well, the problem has never really been, like for most people, the problem has never been, we don't want you to go with Epic. We want.
Yeah.
we want you to stay in development hell forever. It's not really that people are saying that. The problem is the sheer number of people who are willing to completely backpedal on their promises in order to get that big bag of cash.
Yeah. So thankfully, the Oddworld guys hadn't actually made any such promise, so they're not really breaking any promises. It's just a bit disappointing at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the market can speak on that. There's no
Yep.
reason for it not to. I mean, people will buy it if they really want to play an Oddworld game on release. There's no helping that, and I don't think that the long term. I don't think the Epic strategy. One, I don't think it will work long term, and number two, I don't really think that it's good long term. I don't think it does any good for the customer or for the industry long term. I think it at its expense rather, but it's something that I think the market will speak on naturally.
Yeah.
And yeah, all you got to do is ask the question, what happens if all these IPs they keep buying up don't ever get a smash hit out there that has perpetual money coming into it and Fortnite dies?
Well, that Fort money will... Oh, sorry, that Fort money. Yeah, okay. Fortnite money will eventually dry up, as all things do.
It doesn't even have to dry up. The faucet has to stop. They can have a backlog of cash, but if they don't have money coming in, their investors are going to start tapping their feet.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the way these things work.
Yeah.
That's why venture capital is a bad idea. Just by the way. But yeah.
Sorry, I'm maybe 100 experience off leveling. I'm salty now.
Oh, I thought you were hunging at me for my economics 101 lesson.
I thought that leave quest would actually get me across the line, but it didn't.
I thought you were doing an impression of Yoshi trying to fly by flapping his arms.
Oh. Yeah, anyway.
But yeah. Continuing in that vein, I guess. Where the heck did that article go? There's a poem in the middle of my articles.
Yeah, it's kind of in the way, isn't it? Whoops.
Continuing in that
Grow
vein.
some culture, you plebeians.
I grew up with the Jungle Book. I love Rudyard Kipling's work.
Yeah, but liking the Jungle Book makes you a racist now.
Apparently so, yes.
Don't you know that tigers and bears and gorillas are also a race? Jeez, Fern. How intolerant. You're racist against the Blues of the world.
Blue is awesome. Don't knock
Well,
Blue.
I mean, it's not even that. It's that Kipling was born in colonial India.
Mm-hmm.
That means that everything that he produced has the stench of colonialism about it, and is therefore evil and racist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anywho, back on track.
So, Iron Fury was a game that had a bit of a reaction to Reset Era, which is always the wrong idea. So they had a very innocuous art asset in their game that was a gay joke, where they had a bottle of soap called O-Gay as a play on Olay. Right. It's even a stretch to notice the joke. You'd have to think about it for a second.
Yeah.
And a bunch of personal chats on their company's Discord server, semi-official. I don't think it's formally sponsored as the Discord that represents the company or anything. It's a semi-informal thing. They had some comments and screenshots that came off as transphobic. So Reset Era came down on top of them like a bag of bricks for their new game. Ion Fury.
Yep. I'm pretty sure that the people at Reset Era just sit around waiting for one of these things to pounce on, and that's like their whole life.
I'm positive their whole life is having little feelers out there and whatever they can get feelers into and watching Twitter for anything they can read about.
What are we going to read about next?
Just a sad, pathetic existence that subsists only on being angry at people.
Yeah. Anywho.
But yeah, so pieces of trash aside, the pieces of trash got into the higher ups at Ion Fury, and they made the company, and I quote, need to remove all offending content and go to sensitivity training sessions. So this is where the story ended last week, and we didn't post it and talk about it because it's a fairly dry, okay, another company got bought by Reset Era story. But it expanded this week.
It did.
The people that were told to get the sensitivity trainings response to the community for all this shenanigans. And it was a weird mix of trying to save face with their higher-ups and sending as many neon lights to the community that they weren't happy with it either. So they say things like, we didn't compromise our artistic integrity. We just changed a bottle of soap that said "oh gay" on it to something less offensive. That's it. We're 100% with you on the F censorship standpoint, but a stupid joke about gay soap isn't the hill to die on.
I think a stupid joke about gay soap is an ideal hill to die on. Because who's to say what's too stupid, what's too silly?
I'm really resisting the urge to make a slippery slope joke here.
I am
soap.
too. It's been in my head since the start of this.
You had best.
Yeah. So
Better not drop it.
We actually have a quote here from someone who says they're not going to buy the game. And it says, if you want to pirate it, it's only like 95 megabytes. You should check it out. We worked really hard on it, and it's a cool game. F politics.
So you see what I mean by the incredibly weird message we're getting here. Clearly, the dev is frustrated that this had to happen at all and is not happy with the situation, but he still has to play up to his higher-ups a little bit.
And he's going to do it in the snarkiest way possible by the look of it.
And he's going to skirt that line as tight as he can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is why I posted that poem, because this is where we all end up in the end. Like okay, so I'm going to do the poetry reading then, since no one else can see our chat, so they don't know what the poem is.
Okay.
So this has been on the brain because there've been so many stories lately like this one, because of Reset Era and people who are like Reset Era, always pushing this. And so this is a principle that was observed by Rudyard Kipling, and he wrote this poem called The Danegeld, which is set in AD 980 to 1016, and it's about the Danish, what they were like back then. The poem goes thusly. It is always a temptation to an armed and agile nation to call upon a neighbour and to say, "We invaded you last night, we are quite prepared to fight, unless you pay us cash to go away." And that is called asking for Danegeld, and the people who ask it explain that you've only to pay him the Danegeld, and then you'll get rid of the Dane. It is always a temptation for a rich and lazy nation to puff and look important and to say, "Though we know we should defeat you, we have not the time to meet you. We will therefore pay you cash to go away." And that is called paying the Danegeld, but we've proved it again and again that if once you have paid him the Danegeld, you never get rid of the Dane. It is wrong to put temptation in the path of any nation, for fear they should succumb and go astray. So when you are requested to pay up or be molested, you will find it better policy to say, "We never pay anyone Danegeld, no matter how trifling the cost, for the end of that game is oppression and shame, and the nation that pays it is lost." So you see where we're going with this.
Yeah.
In short, if Reset Era marches their foot soldiers up to your borders, you roll your tanks out and flatten them.
Yeah, there is no reason to capitulate to these people, because capitulation doesn't solve anything.
Makes
at
the problem
all.
worse.
There's no end to their demands. The demand that gets met this time will be supplied with an extra, slightly larger demand next time, and so on and so forth. The reason why they feel like they can walk all over a sight gag about gay soap is because people have kowtowed before. Yeah. And eventually you've got these people dictating everything that you can and cannot say. You've got these people, using social media to effectively ruin people's lives. Like this is like even the Vic thing is an outgrowth of this. There are people that decided Vic was bad and have it's been shown that you can get away with destroying somebody's life and reputation via social media, and they engaged in that.
And that's why the Vic thing is so popular as well, is because it's one of the few instances of not paying the Danegeld and actually having to march your tanks up to the line and run these people over.
The notable thing about it is that they've been shown to be paper tigers, ultimately. What did they really have to put up a fight with? And all that was needed was him to not capitulate, to not go quietly into the dark.
And once the tank showed up, all their allies who they'd brought with them said, "Look at everybody standing. Where's everybody? Why are you all recanting your statements? What? You were the one that started the hashtag. Why are you doing this?"
What do you mean the entire website's now gone?
It's like all the posts are edited. What? We can't use them as evidence anymore because they're not the original posts, and nobody archived the original ones. What?
Okay, so that's another thing that we can add to the list, in addition to me singing loudly after Brexit, is we've now had a poetry reading on our show.
Yep, we certainly can. Also, gay soap, apparently.
We have not had gay soap on the show. It was ostensibly not gay soap by the time we got to this story.
Yeah. Honestly, I wouldn't have made the O-gays joke. I would have made it obey, but never mind. That's just me.
Yeah. Not touching that one.
Yeah, I know. I prefer the mind control soap, thank you very much.
Yeah, so, it's a really weird take. And I don't know how sorry I feel for that particular dev that answered that way on the I Am Fury account. Because I think he's frustrated, but I can't read his mind. I can't tell you what he actually thinks.
You could take it the other way. I think you could take it the other way. Like, when he says F politics, there have been a lot of devs who have expressed the opinion that it is only the people who don't like the kowtowing that are being political.
Yeah. So, I don't know. The way I read it is going to be more interpreted by the way I see things, which is a very libertarian stint, in case you couldn't tell. So, of course, I'm going to push back on the ones that are exerting control. But yeah, it reads really weird. It walks that line as hard as you can. So, I thought that was interesting. Let's see.
All right.
The Riot Games thing is kind of minor. I just kind of threw it in there. But the fun one to talk about is the WoW Classic Corpse fiasco, Corpse Gate here.
The only thing I'll say about the Riot one is that Riot paid the Dane Guild.
Yeah.
Riot was paying the Dane Guild before the Danes even turned up.
Yeah, well, the thing is that the Dane Guild that you have to pay it constantly. Like it doesn't stop. The price gets steeper.
So the WoW one, it's kind of dumb. I'm not exactly sure what to make of this.
This is from Niche Gamer, and it is the dumbest article title I saw all week and had to post it. Player corpses are capped in WoW Classic to avoid players spelling out hate speech and spam messages.
So we all, who was around during Vanilla anyway, remembers walking into Orgrimmar and seeing the Gold Stellar ads spelled out in death.
Snape kills Dumbledore.
Yes, that too.
Yes. Just, you would get all kinds of these random screenshots of dead corpses that would make a word, and you would see them browsing some website, and you get your laugh for a minute, and then you move on. But this was such an affront and such a danger that it might display a hate message.
What I find
has to be
dumb is they're hiding behind hate speech instead of like Gold Seller ads or just being a general doofus or server performance.
I think that I agree with a commenter on Niche Gamer somewhere down buried in that mess. That this is likely to put less skeletons in the game so China won't get mad.
Also that.
Especially, and they don't want to admit it to America because of the Diablo fiasco.
I'm pretty sure that a solution, like a technical solution that probably already exists because they've solved it before.
Yeah.
So that would just be a straight asset swap or a change in a variable or something like that would be sufficient. Unless the fact that they're cannibalizing ancient code is the problem. I don't know.
Yeah. It should be honestly, it should just be a very nothing happening, but just Blizzard.
I don't think I've ever actually seen the hate speech explanation.
Yeah. Niche Gamer was the first one to throw that out there. And
well, that's a senior test lead's comment.
Yeah.
That's not something Niche Gamer just made up. The other thing though is that it goes on. They don't want people spelling advertisements, hate speech, and other negative messages. That's a turn of phrase that I've been seeing more and more, and it really gets on my nerves. Like, you don't want negativity.
You're
Like,
living that cotton ball.
What does that mean?
Well,
What does
that's
it
how-
mean? Does it mean
Yeah.
anything that makes you feel feelings you don't like that's negative, therefore it should be banned?
Well, you wind up with the TV tropes effect, where if you look at TV tropes' history and how they went down that slippery slope of we want this to be a positive environment, all the way down to everything except this very select list of things is banned from what was a pretty open system before. So yeah, and yeah, just in case y'all were wondering, the response has a negative 57 point on Reddit.
Of course.
Yeah, nobody was a fan of this.
The whole thing's just dumb.
Yeah, but yeah, there's been a lot of dumb coming out of WoW Classic already, which is pretty appalling.
But not surprising.
The one that I saw this week was that somebody had developed an add-on which put the LFG tool back into the game, into Classic.
Interesting.
Now there are two groups on this, and there's actually a way of taking this. Like, I think that Blizzard's response was that to say that we're going to break this add-on because this runs against our vision of what was the classic social experience, where you had to interact with other people to form groups, and having a tool which allows it to be done automatically by a system basically stops it being what this project was supposed to be. And I think that that's a extremely reasonable take, and the one that I think should take place. Like, it's always annoying when they've got to go in and break the functionality of a bunch of mods because somebody's overstepped the line. And like, I don't have any animus towards the person who made this mod. He probably just thought he was helping the community or whatever.
Yep.
But yeah, that would be corrosive to the entire experiment if you could just press a button and suddenly talking is no longer needed in WoW Classic. It's no longer the same game. But the first thing that comes to mind from that is that I don't think Blizzard has ever shown this sort of spine before.
Yeah,
when it comes to sticking to a vision. Is it something about Classic that just compels them to behave themselves? Like,
I have no idea.
I don't know. It could be that just they are 100% aware of who this product is for, and know it would be a really, really dumb idea to just flush all the money they could potentially make down the toilet with this thing. And so they don't want to sabotage it too hard. They want to at least get their initial payout.
Yeah, I don't know what the logic is, but I'm glad that, at least they have that much in the way of cojones. Like, they were actually willing to say, no, we have a vision for this. We know what it's supposed to look like. And just because it makes things easier for the community doesn't mean we're going to compromise that vision when it's going to have unforeseen consequences down the road. Or rather, it has consequences that are exactly foreseen because we saw this all play out on live, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
We need to...
Oops.
Now,
people need to really understand the importance of communication in World of Warcraft Classic and how it needs to be reestablished, that you need to open your mouth and talk to people. Otherwise, the experience will be dead on arrival.
The reason why it stuck out to me that they were sticking to their guns like this... Oh, there's another person who's joined me to run in circles around the fountain. The reason why it stuck out to me like this is that while there were a lot of people who patted Blizzard on the back for sticking to their guns and not compromising the vision, there was a loud contingent of people who were very angry. They said that, no, you don't want to use it, then you don't have to use it. I want to play Classic my way, which means I want my quest finder, and I want my automatic quest navigator, and I want my automatic gathering assistant, and I want my weak orders to tell me exactly what button to hit when I need to hit it. I don't want anybody telling me how to play.
Well, if you want all that, you might as well play live.
Yeah, that's the thing. They want to turn Classic into live.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is that they don't even seem to realize that that's what they want. I can only assume that these people didn't play Classic.
I'm going to
They
assume
must
that.
not have.
Because otherwise
Because
they
the
realise they're
thing-
missing the point.
Because the thing with having a quest finder, a quest group creator thing, is once it hits a critical mass, it becomes mandatory.
Mm-hmm.
If you allow a certain number of people to use a system exclusively for grouping, which is not the core game system, everybody has to use it. That's the thing that, like, these people clearly aren't thinking it through, and maybe this is just the way I see it. But if you allow a group of people to build up which is using this, it forces everybody to use it. This is not actually a matter of choice. Everybody is saying it's just a matter of choice. If you don't want to use the LFG app, you can just choose not to.
Yeah, go in the middle of Orgrimmar right now on WoW Live and try to spam general chat and get a group.
It ain't happening.
You might actually manage to get one simply due to the sheer novelty. Because nobody does that anymore. But yeah, once everybody is invested in the system, they have to use the system. Because what you're doing, if you allow a community to build up using the LFG, is that's a community of people who are not available to group by other means. Like, they're functionally not available to do it. Because, I mean, nothing stops you from trying to shout an org and put a group together now. But because everybody uses that built-in system to form their groups, those people are effectively off the market for conventional shout grouping. That's just the way it is. And any argument that it's a free choice doesn't apply here.
Yeah.
Because it's basically like market forces, really. They provided a system which dramatically compromised the social aspect of the game, but was ridiculously convenient for getting a group you didn't care about fast. And now everybody has to use it.
So, and yeah, it undermines the whole point of recreating the WoW experience from Classic. The biggest part of the WoW experience from Classic that has been killed is communication. Players don't talk to each other anymore.
Nope.
There is no meeting a new guild by joining a random group you found in the middle of, like, Desolace for a Maraudon run. That doesn't happen.
Please don't talk about Maraudon.
Yeah, that's bringing back horrible memories.
I was traumatized. We ran that place so many times.
I joined one of my first few guilds in Maraudon after doing an orange run where I just got along with the guys there, and they were an Aussie guild that played in the middle of the fracking night for me. Like, this is how it used to work, and that's part of the classic WoW experience. If they cut that kind of communication out and make it hyper impersonal like it is on live, it's a different game. You cut out the entire fabric of how people interact with each other, and just effectively make a worse version of WoW.
Yeah, and that, as traumatized as I am by our 5 billion runs of Mara Purple Side that we did when we were crashing those characters out in 6 days or whatever it was. Like, they refused to admit for the longest time that Group Finder could have any negative social consequences on the structure of game society.
Well, they gave the same argument that these idiots are giving.
Yeah, they did. They very much did. And so what I'm getting at is that this is an implicit admission from Blizzard that they were wrong. The fact that they're sticking by their guns on this and saying, no, we are going to break this mod because we don't want a automatic grouping tool introduced to the WoW Classic project. It's an implicit admission we were wrong about the effect on the game's social structure. And Blizzard never admits that they're wrong.
You mean the total, complete destruction of the game's social structure?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it was replaced by a different sort of social structure, which involved comparing gear scores.
Yeah, it involved inspecting and kicking without saying a dang word to anybody.
Yeah.
At best.
and then they brought in the gear score mod. Like, because I mean, that's the next logical step, right? Like, if you've got the auto grouping mod, you haven't done any kind of curation of the people in your group, so you do it after the fact, which involves using gear score.
Those were dark days when that was in prominence.
Remember, you needed to have like a like, what is it, heroic Ice Crown Citadel gear score to do, heroic dungeons or whatever.
Yeah, to do basic level gear or basic level content.
Item level XX or kick.
Yeah.
Yeah, the WoW player base is incredibly lazy by nature, just due to how the game got. I'm trying not to swear. It's fluffified, softified, made easier. So
Mm.
that stuff, any kind of convenience tool like that makes it so people have to do less and communicate less with people and disengage even more, they'll take it.
But I wonder all these people, all of these My Choice people, I wonder how they're going to figure out how to play if they actually somehow manage to hit max level and realize that there's no dailies, there's no world quests.
Nope.
Like, how are they going to decide what to do?
You gotta go make friends. You gotta go find a voice chat server. You gotta go talk to them. You gotta go make a group and run Skullomance 800 times, and then
Go out
cry
and
when the
grind
one
blue
pug
dragons for the pet.
Yeah, get mad when the one warlock you pugged for the 500 Skullomance runs gets Headmaster's Charge the one time it drops, and then listen to the mage complain about it for 8 weeks. Like
That's
this
totally
is
warlock
how
weapon.
I may or may not be speaking from personal experience here.
You've
I had to
got
listen
share
to that
your
guy
own
cry
salt.
about. I had to listen to that guy cry about that for like 2 months.
Well, I mean, if it had been you, you'd be mad as well. Like,
I would too. To be fair,
like, imagine somebody ninja'd the bindings from you.
Yeah, let's best we skip that. That story becomes more and more distorted in my head the more I think about it anyway. I'm not sure I could give an accurate retelling anymore. Because it just starts to break down with how frustrated I get when I think about it.
Anywho, we should move on.
There ain't much to move on to after that.
That's probably for the best because we're starting to hit time.
Oh, right, you've got to work, don't you?
Yeah.
So you can't just drag it out interminably.
Yep. I just got a new ability. Huzzah. And by new ability, I mean an old ability. Wearing a different hat.
All right, then. I guess we'll wrap it up if we don't have anything else.
Let's do it.
All right, closing comments go.
Good old classic MMOs. They will eat your life.
Ah, I'm behind Fern again. I need to go and level up.
Haha,
Why, Squeenix, did you put the earrings where you did on the Viera ears? This is a serious question.
Wow.
Because they look stupid.
Really silly.
Apparently Machinists are some sort of high-powered backflipping acrobats. Once you get your start getting your heated shots.
Everyone in a JRPG is.
That they are. I mean, what's the point of doing that breakdance move just to shoot something? I mean, it's aside from it looking really cool.
My paladin can levitate in the air with her chain off her basic AoE attack.
Yeah.
She jump 20 feet in the air and hang and have like a full 3 seconds of hang time while the animation plays.
Gravity is optional.
I guess she is part rabbit, so she does have strong jumping legs. Not sure how that accounts for the hang time, but
I've owned a number of rabbits and none of them are able to hover.
Maybe they're just not trying hard enough.
Maybe that's the cat part. Can cats hover?
Maybe.
Mind you, my rabbit experience may not be the universal rabbit experience. After all, none of my rabbits ever had parasites that infested my room.
That's also a plus. Yeah.
I would make fun of that, but the source of that problem is in the other room. Like, yeah, they're living. My sister's living downstairs with me for the next few days.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's get out of here.
So yeah. I think that's pretty much it, folks. Email topic of the week is what do you think of all these things about WoW Classic and the schizo nature of how the devs are treating it? There you go. All right, folks. We'll see you next week. Sayonara. Bye-bye.